guys, welcome back to my channel. Today is a very special Halloween episode of Maps and Monsters, during which we'll be discussing the Bobbit worm, which is a real sea creature, but we're going to enhance it to monstrous proportions today. First, a quick discussion of the art that you're watching here. This is watercolor on Arches paper. It's quite a large piece for me. I normally go quite smaller. This is 9 by 12, I believe. Unfortunately, the way I zoomed it in, you actually kind of lose some of the bottom half of the painting, but it's not the important parts, so that's fine. I started by lining my artwork in colored pencil rather than pen, which I'm really like how that turned out. There's two different colored pencil colors. I think one is avocado and the other is slate gray for the shark. I do like how the piece turned out, but that's not really why we're here. We're really here to talk about the terrifying and awesome creature, the Bobbit worm, which is a real-life aquatic predator. It lives in coral reefs, and it's an ambush hunter. So it hides its worm-like body in the sand, with only its head pieces exposed. And as a fish or crab or whatever else walks nearby, it senses it with its antennas, and it pushes its body out of the sand and snags it with very long mandible pieces. I don't know if any of you have played the game Subnautica, but there's definitely some Subnautica references came from this Bobbit worm, because it looks just like some of the very scary leviathans that are found in Subnautica. They have the exact same creepy mandibles. So I wanted to take this existing creature that can already be 10 feet long. Well, the problem is they can be 10 feet long, but they only get to be about 1 to 2 inches wide. So it kind of limits the size of their prey. So I wanted to imagine a bobbit worm that could get big enough to eat a shark. I'm not saying a great white shark, I'm not saying a megalodon or anything huge, but big enough to eat a man-sized shark. Like this black-tip reef shark, which grows on average to be about 5 feet long, between 5 and 6 feet long, and are regularly found in the bobbit worm's habitat of a coral reef. So on that vein, I wanted to try and figure out how would I make a Dungeons and Dragons monster from this bobbit worm. So, let's talk about that. The first thing I wanted to do was get some reference for some existing worm-like creatures that act in similar ways that already exist in the D&D universe. So they already have stats, and you already have an idea of how they look. The thing that struck me as being very similar in how it acts is the Remoraz, which is really, it's known for being like a fire-related worm. Its size huge, it's a monstrosity. But more importantly, I was interested in how it attacks. It uses a bite that grapples the creature, and if the creature can't get out of the grapple, it's then swallowed, which is exactly the type of behavior I want my bobbit worm to have. However, a Remoraz is actually challenge rating 11, which is a pretty high challenge rating for Dungeons & Dragons. It's also very large. A huge Remoraz, I mean, that would be simply enormous. It would be like 80 feet long. That's not really what I'm going for here. I'm really looking for something that could eat, like I said, a medium-sized creature. So we're probably looking for a size large or size huge at best. Then I also wanted to look up what kind of threatening sharks there are that already exist in D&D. I'm probably going to be speccing out my own sharks for my shallows setting, but I just wanted to get a sense of what that looked like. And really, the only scary and threatening shark is the giant shark, which is a huge beast. But it's challenge rating 5. So even at the highest possible challenge rating, it only goes up to 5 for sharks. So I'm thinking, and that seems about right to me, unless there's some freak of nature kind of situation, I don't necessarily need for a shark to be the biggest, baddest thing in the ocean. There's other really cool stuff that's even scarier than sharks in my setting. So I think that's in line with what I can expect. So I want a bobbit worm that would be just as scary as a mid-range shark. So I'm thinking at this point that I want about a challenge rating 3 bobbit worm. What would that mean? That means, it would probably take a full party at the 3rd level to defeat this, maybe 2 people at the 5th level to defeat it, so on. But I also want to pull the actions from the Remoraz of that bite and swallow technique. So, keeping that in mind, I'm going to go ahead and take a look at, there's tables that are published by D&D, or I should say by Wizards of the Coast, about how to create monster statistics by challenge rating. So it says things like, challenge rating 3 means by default as a +2 proficiency bonus, an armor class of 13, a certain range of hit points, etc. So keeping that in mind, I'm going to pull up a stat block and get started filling that in. In the meantime, while I get started working on creating this bobbit worm, I did want to tell you some more interesting and fun facts about the bobbit worm. How they actually digest their prey is actually not very well known because their prey is so much larger than the size of their head. Like I mentioned, they have like a 1-inch, maybe a 2-inch head, even though they have a as long as 10-foot long body. So scientists currently believe that they inject some sort of toxin or other narcotic in order to desensitize their prey animal so that they can eat them slowly once they're withdrawn into their little tube hole. They're also often found in aquariums. So if you can imagine, these huge worms sometimes get lodged in rocks when they're slightly smaller, and sea aquariums, you often purchase live rock, and in order to help stabilize the various pH and bacteria counts and all those things in your aquarium. So they sometimes hitch a ride in one of those rocks, and aquarium enthusiasts never know they're there until they go to clean the aquarium out. And there have been several situations where an aquarium owner has realized that they have a huge bobbit worm that's been living in their tank this whole time, and maybe that's where their cute pet clownfish ended up. Alright, back to creating this monster. So I've got a bit of an idea of what I want it to be roughly. I want it to be AC 13. This is a pretty good number for tough hide and leather type armors, which is this would be like a chitinous kind of armor. It's going to have a swim speed of 40 because that's like the average swim speed in my setting. I want it to be highly strong and have a high constitution, but dumb as dirt because it's a worm, ultimately. It's a big scary worm, but it's a worm. It does have tremor sense, and I think that only makes sense because they basically have tremor sense in the wild, in the real world. So, that's how they kind of detect that something is above them. I am going to give it the one attack, the bite, and then the swallow attack. And I'm also going to leave in from the Remoraz, and I'm also going to leave in the feature of the Remoraz that if something attacks it from the inside, i.e. after it has been swallowed, there's some consequences for that. Like, the creatures could be regurgitated, or, you know, you could potentially kill it from inside out. Now, jumping back to the artwork here, we're getting kind of towards the end, or not necessarily towards the end, but certainly towards what I think is the coolest part, which is the blood. But I've already made the fatal mistake for this piece. Have you seen it yet? There's simply something slightly wrong with that shark. And before you guess, let me just tell you. The fin that is on the left should have the same color patterning as the fin that's on the right. You're looking at the underside of its fin, so you should be seeing white, like its belly. But for some reason, I just got a little overzealous with the color, and I just made it all that. I mean, it's a nice color, but that fin should be a pale cream color. Here's the best part, you guys. I got this new color from Daniel Smith specifically for the blood, and I think it turned out really well. First, I kind of lay it down a little lightly because I was a little worried I'd overdo it. But actually what happens is I'm going to go back in with just a water wash, and it's going to make this look amazing. Like, kind of like the blood is dispersing through the water, which is exactly how it would look, which is just so cool. I'm so excited with how this piece turned out. The only thing I really don't like is I was trying to make the worm look iridescent, because if you look up images of this worm, it is iridescent. It's got pretty blues and greens in its scales, but that just didn't work out. It just doesn't look right. Next time I'll either just skip the iridescence or maybe take some time and really study how iridescence would look in this sort of situation. I've never tried it before, so it's something totally new to me. I did reference John Merlot's book, and because he had some insight as to how to make iridescence, but it just didn't work out for me. But I'm really proud of how this piece came together, all in all. And I really like what I did with the Bobbit worm itself as a monster. Really gave it that sort of deadly, but it's not crazy. It's really easy to go too far with Dungeons & Dragons monsters sometimes, and so I like that I've been able to keep it contained but still make it a major threat to the size of creatures that, you know, our players will be. I also like to think that this might be something, the Bobbit worm might have some really cool treasure in it, or maybe one of these mandibles would make an awesome sword. Who knows? But I like forcing people to go after dangerous things in order to get cool equipment. I don't like just dropping it for free, you know? I'd rather somebody pursue it. Anyhow, thank you so much for joining me for this special Halloween edition featuring the Bobbit worm and this black tip reef shark. You can finally see the whole picture now. I'm not so zoomed in as before. This is the mixed media part. I'm adding in some colored pencil for some texture. I don't know. It does make it look a little more like sand and a little less like random painting. And here's the completed piece. Thank you guys so much for stopping by, and I hope you have a great, fun Halloween. Don't forget to subscribe down below.